better watch out with your cliched rhymes. You opening your mouth should be seen as a crime. Nick and Joe are coming to town. They're making a list, you think you got swag. Be careful, they'll throw you in the podcast gulag. Nick and Joe are coming to town. They see your shameless cash grabs, the money that you'll make. Your uninventive songwriting is a great big fat headache.
You better get good, they won't accept less. They won't be happy if your songwriting's a mess. Nick and Joe are coming to town. They're making their lists, the good will get bread, the rest will get shot or a pat on the head. Nick and Joe are coming to town.
They see the new releases, the good ones will get praise. The bad ones they will tear apart with long verbal essays.
You better watch out,
Better be scared.
there's no bad album that's gonna be spared. Nick and Joe are coming to town.
F sharp, A sharp, revisited.
Hello everyone and welcome to F Sharp A Sharp Revisited, the music review podcast where we let you know what's going on in the wonderful world of music. I am Joe, the music critic Santa Claus, delivering presents of kind words to musicians who do well, and chasing those who release terrible music down with laser guns and chainsaws. With me is Nick, the Grinch who stole Christmas without the redemption arc. And
I think I like to think of myself as Saint Nicholas, who goes around with his sack to give presents out to those that deserve them and stuff the people that don't deserve them into the sack.
okay, that's a good. I think okay, role reversal. You're the Santa Claus. You're Saint Nicholas. I'll be the Grinch.
Yeah.
I don't get a redemption arc.
This week, the podcast gulag is the big sack.
Yeah. Oh.
If you've been naughty, you get put in the sack, where you can sit with the lumps of coal.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this. So the first item we've got is 3 items.
Yeah, we're just going straight for it.
I really liked this idea that every Christmas time, well, just before Christmas, you get a bunch of celebrities who think they'll try and release like a cover album, like a Christmassy album, that kind of thing. And to me, it always comes across as a bit of a shameless cash grab.
Yeah.
So I put forward Anton de Beke's album.
And then I upped the ante and said Christmas is a time for excess. Let's add in Bradley Walsh and Alexander Armstrong as well.
Yeah. So we've got a nice little compare and contrast section going on over here. So,
Shall we start with Anton de Beke, as he was the original idea?
Okay.
Let's just give a bit of a background on Anton de Beke. He is a dancer, best known for Strictly Come Dancing, I think, and not a great singer.
Okay, this is something I have to say across the board for all 3 albums. To me, it was very apparent that singing is not their day job.
Yeah, I mean, of the 3, I think Alexander Armstrong can get away with it. He has a fairly nice voice, but it's quite clear that it's not what he does.
For me, see, I don't think he was the best. I think Bradley Walsh was the best, even though he's not.
I thought he was the worst. No, actually,
okay.
I think he was verging on the worst. I think Anton de Beke just took it because his voice is a bit nasally for me.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about them as singers. For me, Anton de Beke, he wasn't bad. But there were notes that were flat. Rain on My Parade I noted as having a few. It's the kind of flat where you could get away with it if it was like a rock song or like hip hop, where like being absolutely pitch perfect doesn't necessarily matter all that much. But for someone like me who's been trained to hear these kind of things in a genre where you really do need to get the vocals on point, I noticed it and I didn't like it.
Well, I think my big problem with the Anton de Beke album is that there's so little variance in the arrangements of the songs from the original songs, and I guess if there's a theme between these three albums, it's how inoffensive they are.
Oh, definitely.
It's just
Definitely.
there's nothing about them which is in any way original or inventive. And I mean, they're
Okay.
cover albums, so that's to be expected a little bit. But come on, you could have tried.
Try some. To be honest, to be fair to Anton to Beke, I bet that you look good on the dance floor is different to the original.
But it
I
sounds
also-
exactly like you would imagine his cover of it to sound.
Yeah,
And
pretty much.
just generally across the album, it's just the most obvious song choices possible.
For me, one of my biggest problems with Anton de Beke's album is that half the time he's chasing around songs that Frank Sinatra has just put a better performance on already. So, what is the.
Yeah.
Like, he markets this album as being must know show tunes, which, yeah, we know them, and. You know, they're not done better here. You're better off making a playlist if you can of
It's not really must know, it's do know.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
I guess there are a few attempts to make it a bit different throughout the album. Like on Putting on the Ritz, he puts that sort of weird echoey, distorted bit onto his voice when he goes super duper. But that's about it for the album.
Pretty much.
Also, I just want to say, I listened to this album, and then the next day I went and saw La La Land at the Electric Cinema in Birmingham. I had a really lovely time watching it and thinking, oh my god, Anton de Beke's cover of City of Stars is so bad.
It's
I mean,
not as good as the original.
one of the
original.
criticisms for the film that it's from is that Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone aren't great singers, but thank God it was an
Yeah.
Anton de Beke.
They're so much better than Anton de Beke. To be honest, City of Stars was probably one of the most enjoyable moments on the album for me. I've got so many yellow highlights and grey highlights, which, for reference, yellow is kind of I'm a bit uninterested by. Grey means you're getting into the sack. You're getting into the sack, and yeah. Most of my grey ones are the ones that Frank Sinatra have already done, just because I'll go on record and say that I am a fan of Frank Sinatra singing. So yeah, not great.
Okay, let's talk about someone else now. Let's talk about Bradley Walsh.
Okay, there's one point I just have to get off my chest. He markets this album as like a collection of his favourite songs. I don't know how his wife lives with him. How can you have such sappy music taste? I can't stomach this album. Like, I can appreciate that he can hit I think he's one of the better singers out of the three, that he hits the notes. He does some high notes well, some not so well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think when he sings, he sounds a bit forced to me, especially the high notes.
Yeah.
He's sort of, he's got one of those good voices, but a very average good voice for me.
Yeah. I think all three are the ones that kind of, they hit the notes, but they don't really they're not that practiced, and they're not able to put that personality into it either, which just makes them come across as bland.
And I'm to be honest with Bradley Walsh, I'm glad he didn't put his personality into the singing, because when he puts his personality into the talking sections, it's painful.
It's cringy. Oh, there was such a great episode of The Chase. I don't usually watch quiz shows, but it's one of my favourites because of how sassy the chasers are. They actually brought up about his album, and he asked the chaser, "Oh, what did you think of it?" And the chaser was like, I laughed so much at that. But
I can't get on board with anyone who has some backing singers called the Bradettes.
ooh, that's so cringy.
Yeah.
It's creepy. But yeah, let me see. What have I noted down as highlights? When Did the Bells Ring for Me was a nice rendition.
I didn't put down any highlights at all. I thought that his penultimate song, the shout out song, where he just goes through saying, "Hey, this is what happened with everyone on the album. Thank you for making my dream a possibility. This is all about me, really. You do realise that. Look at me. I'm Bradley Walsh."
Yeah, it made me cringe. I just want to make another point. That's just led me on to another point. I did not know When Do the Bells Ring for Me originally came from. And this is a point I want to kind of make about cover culture in general, at least on an online platform, because I didn't buy any of these albums. I streamed them on Spotify. Spotify, of course I did. But if I didn't know a song, there wasn't an easy way to find out who the original composers or performers were, which on some of these tracks I would actually like to find out, but it actually took a bit of like digging to actually find that, and that's something that didn't really sit well with me that much. Not sure if you've got any opinions on that, but I kind of just...
I don't really, because these people didn't give me any incentive to look at who originally did the tracks.
Okay, I mean that's fair enough, but I just have this I don't know, this feeling that I want more credit to go to the original artist, basically. So, yeah. Any more thoughts on Bradley Walsh?
I want him to go away.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay,
Let's
so
talk about Alexander Armstrong now.
the strongest album out of the three, in my opinion.
The Armstrongest album.
Yes. What? That's terrible.
So we've got
Okay,
a different quiz show host, this time
Yeah.
for Pointless, which is my favourite TV quiz show. Oh, I remember I was at Alex's house and we were watching The Chase, and then it had the adverts and it came up for this Christmas album, and it was sort of that point that I thought Bradley Walsh Christmas album, Alexander Armstrong Christmas album, let's add those in.
Yeah.
And this one is different to the other two. It's it's still a cover album, but it's of more traditional Christmas songs.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fairly nice mix of them.
I think
It's
so
not
too.
really offensive. There's
Yeah.
no really out picks that are completely out there. I would have loved to see him do a cover of Fairy Tale of New York, for example. It wouldn't have worked, but I would have loved to have seen it.
It's very, very traditional, the choices. Very traditional, very inoffensive, which I think ultimately isn't all that bad, because I think I would recommend this album as background music to the family gathering.
And actually, to further that, his version of White Winter Hymnal, I think, is actually really good. I really enjoy listening to that track and have gone back to listen to it on its own.
Yeah. My favourite track was Winter Wonderland. I thought that was a really nicely well-produced arrangement. That's another thing with this album. There are so many Christmas albums that have such shoddy production. They'll just like stick a microphone in a room and get people to sing and perform, and it's like this really poorly recorded album. This album sounds really nice, I thought. All the strings, all the arrangements, they sounded pleasant, dynamic when they needed to. And yeah, I mean, I don't have like a huge amount of greens, but it was still very enjoyable.
One of the things I said is that he's got the nicest voice of the three for me, and it's a nice mix of song choices, and I like Right Winter Hymnal. But beyond that, I really don't have much to say. It's not the most exciting album, but it doesn't have any obvious flaws either. It's the best, but not by being a good album. I don't think.
By being the least inoffensive.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest sticking point for me was his not all of his singing, his bassier notes came across as very nasally. It kind of felt like he was very out of practice going for the low notes, like he was going for baritone songs, but he just... he wasn't hitting them out of tune, but it definitely sounded like he was reaching for them.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
I do get what you mean.
So that's my only real complaint of that album. But other than that, I thought it was fine. You know what? It was nice to hear him sing Hoopla on I Still Believe in Christmas. So you know what? That's another positive.
Okay, so I think we're both in agreement that Alexander Armstrong in a Winter Light is the best of the three. Which do you prefer from, Bradley Walsh's When You're Smiling or Anton de Beke from the Top?
For me, okay. Despite the fact that I do not like Bradley Walsh's taste at all, I think it was the better executed album. Anton de Beke, I didn't really care for his singing. I thought his choices, there's no reason to listen to them over previous recordings. And you know what the worst thing about Anton de Beke's album?
What?
My mum's asked for it for Christmas.
Ugh.
I'm hoping no one's bought it for her. So
one last point about Anton de Beke's album is the guest spots on it just aren't very well used at all, in my opinion. And the banter he has with some of them just... It doesn't feel like there's any chemistry. It feels like he's got these people on just to have guests. Well, okay, let's say we're going to give one a nice new toy, we're going to give one a lump of coal, and we're going to put one of them in the sack to take away to never be seen by their family again.
So Anton de Beke's going in the sack from me.
I think so too, actually. I think we're both going to agree on this. Coal to Bradley Walsh and toy to Alexander Armstrong.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Happy outcomes.
That's my first Christmas victim claimed. Into the sack with you.
Ooh.
Let's talk about something hopefully a bit more positive.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's talk about Glassjaw and their new album Material Control. So Glassjaw are this four-piece Long Island post-hardcore band, and this is their first album in, I believe, 15 years. Their last album being in 2002. It was Worship and Tribute, acclaimed by many to be a truly great album, and they're very influential. This album, I believe this album dropped with very little notice that it was coming, and I'd never heard Glassjaw before. This was my first listening experience to them. I thought, well, we should cover it because, you know, they're making this album after 15 years. And I was very pleasantly surprised by it. I really enjoyed it.
So was I, because when I saw post-hardcore, I thought, oh no, because I'm a bit on and off with that genre, to put it lightly. But I really, really enjoyed this album a lot.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking that you'd probably, you know, dislike it because of the fact it's post-hardcore, and I know your opinions on that genre. And you haven't had a good track record with shouty albums this year.
This one wasn't that shouty. I wouldn't have said it was.
I'd still say it's shouty, even if it's not as shouty. Maybe that's why you like it.
It's
less shouty than the others.
It's melodically shouty, shall we say. I'll go into a bit of why I enjoyed it. So one thing I really enjoyed about this album was how they voiced all the instruments. I'm quite a fan of more polyphonic textures anyway, but so often you've got these growling, frothy bass lines out the bottom, screeching guitar, and in the middle some guitar work going on a completely different melodic line, and they always brought it together in a way so that the abrasiveness of each instrument bounced off each other, and I thought that was really effective, especially in the first two tracks.
I was going to use the example, the whirring guitar that happens in the chorus to New White Extremity is it's so good, amazing. It's all layered so incredibly well that nothing is throttling the other instruments, and with music this intense, I can see that easily happening, but it's all put together like perfectly.
Yeah, like it's so abrasive, but there's a certain clarity to it. You can hear everything, and I suppose my other point was that the bass work was fantastic. I mean, I have to recognize that I'm a bass player. But there are so many songs where the bass lines stood out. Shearer in the chorus, again, this lovely, just all over the place bass work that strangely holds the song together so well. And I mean, you can pick out pretty much any song, like Strange Hours, Bible and Six, Closer, just really good. So my props in that department.
Something else I really liked about the album is how varied it actually is. There's a lot of dynamic range throughout the album. There are a lot of points where I don't want to say you're allowed to breathe, because I mean this album I think is pretty intense throughout, but in very different ways. On the songs where it's not full on in your face, very loud, very abrasive, it's quite eerie and haunting, I think. Yeah. Especially on tracks like Bastille Day.
Bastille Day.
Yeah.
I really liked that track. That was one of two tracks I initially thought were kind of a bit weird detours on the album, but what I liked about Bastille Day is just the polyrhythmic drumming. On second listen, it kind of dawned on me that so much of the other textures on the album are very polyphonic, and so when I'm listening to Bastille Day, it feels like a natural progression. It feels like something completely different, completely fresh, but it flows so well from the textures of the other songs that it works really well, I thought. But should we talk about the title track, Material Control? Because I like it.
But it's weirdly placed?
It's weirdly placed. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's very different. You've got these kind of echoey drums going on. It sounds like it was recorded in a garage, which I like the aesthetic of.
Yeah,
but
and it's got that synth bit that sort of pops in and out, which I think works really well with the drums.
It works really well.
But it's sort of a decent interlude track, which is weirdly placed on the album, so it doesn't lead amazingly into the final track where you would expect this, you know, huge build-up of momentum to just crash into you as the album rounds out. It doesn't set you up for that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
agree, because
I think it's weird that the title track from the album is this sort of minute and a half long, very
it's out of left field, isn't it?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just come out of the blue. I mean, because when I listen to the album, I listen to that track and, through the album, the tracks before and after. Personally, it doesn't bother me at all, but I could understand why someone else listening to it would go a bit, oh, what was that?
I think it would have worked better either right at the center of the album or at the very beginning or end.
Perhaps not right at the end, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Let's talk about what is obviously the best track on the album, Shearer.
yes.
It's a compositional masterpiece. Just there's no other way of describing it, and it's got such a great use of harsh sound throughout.
I love the guitar squeals in the
And
second verse.
the guitar solo in it is so wonderfully hectic.
It's probably my favourite metal track of the year. Oh, spoilers for next podcast. But yeah, it's intense. It's throttling. It's hard to really think of as many adjectives as I would like, but everything comes together so well. It's so abrasive.
Yeah.
It's just satisfying. So satisfying.
And I think the same goes for My Conscience Weighs a Ton. That's another one of my favourite tracks along with the first two. It's got a great use of dissonance in it, and once again, great use of harsh sound, and the transition into the chorus is absolutely sublime.
Has a real epic feel to it,
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely love it. And none of these tracks outstay their welcome, I don't think. The album is fairly short. It's about 30... it's about 38 minutes, I believe, and there's isn't a huge amount of tracks either.
12 tracks. They're all quite short.
And they're fairly short. I mean, especially when you've got interlude tracks like Bastille Day and Material Control. And with how intense the album is, I'm glad that it doesn't force you to stick around for too long.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a sort of a quick rush, and it works so well as that.
And I think I like that as well. I probably wouldn't want to listen to this for like an hour.
Yeah. That being
basically, but
said, my least favourite track on the album, Strange Hours, isn't a terrible track. I just think it drags just a little too much and disrupts the flow. So actually, I could have possibly done with the album being a little shorter in that respect.
Okay. I mean, that track didn't bother me. My least favourite was Pompeii, purely because I thought it lacked the textural ingenuity of all the other tracks. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a bad track at all.
Not at all.
My main sticking point with this album, though, is with the lyrics, because so often they sound like sentences that they've just cut up into 3 or 4 word phrases, threw them up in the air and picked them one by one. Not sure if that's something you felt with this album, but
I generally think with metal and post-hardcore, this may seem like a bit of a cop-out, but I don't often pay as much attention to the lyrics as with other genres, because most of the time I feel like they're not really the main point of the music. It's sort of expected that a lot of music nowadays will have lyrics, and if the band aren't great at producing the lyrics, especially in genres like post-hardcore and metal, where I think the emphasis is more on the instruments, I'm not going to fault them as much as for like rap and hip hop. And if Planetarium, for example, I mean, it has good lyrics. If it didn't, I don't think I would mind so much.
okay. I mean, well, I think that's a fair point of view, but for me personally, there are some kind of themes that are touched on kind of here that I just think could have been, like, the overall songs could have been that much better if there was, like, a coherent message with them. I mean, I did note some of them down. Like in New White Extremity, which I really did like the instrumentation for. You've got the writing is on the wall, fading, and no heroes. Yeah. Hell before you, never to come back. New neighbour.
Yeah, and this is why I don't look into the lyrics for albums like these, because I know I'm just going to be disappointed.
So I mean, that was
At least he doesn't spit radiation like Chernobyl.
That's a good point. Or collect receipts. But, so yeah, I mean, that was my only real, problem with it. Otherwise I really enjoy it. I'd really recommend this.
Yeah, I think this album gets a strong 8 from me.
Strong 8 from me as well. Probably not play for background music at your family
No,
gatherings.
no,
but
don't play this at Christmas time unless your family are
They're all metalheads.
all metalheads and you're sacrificing a goat at the table.
Yeah. So, yeah, very enjoyable release.
Yeah, I intend to listen to their previous 2 albums as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about something a bit different to Glassjaw. Let's talk about something which we've kind of talked about before. So you got Brockhampton. You know, if you've listened to our podcast, then we've reviewed their past 2 albums, which both came out this year,
Yeah.
and we both liked.
Yeah.
So very impressive on them for doing that. They've now got Saturation Free, which follows the same formula as the first 2. I guess that's their plan, was to release these 3 albums in 1 year to really, saturate the music scene and really make their name. And you can't deny they've succeeded in doing that.
Yeah, they've been hard at work, definitely.
Yeah, and good for them. Let's also give a quick mention to the fact that they're going on the naughty list for pretending that this was their final album. It's not. They lied.
Yeah. Naughty, naughty. Won't be having any of that.
Well, Joe, are they going on your naughty or nice list?
They're going on my naughty list.
Joe.
Because I don't like this album. And I liked their first 2 albums. I wanted to like this album, but there wasn't really a whole lot that I liked about it. Okay. I know it's painful for you to hear this, Nick, but so one of the first problems I had about this album was the production and mixing was so loud and abrasive, which on certain tracks or on certain albums kind of works with the compositions, but on this album it just doesn't. I thought Johnny was the biggest offender of this. You've got because you've got this saxophone and then some kind of snipped up vocal bits, but they're all so loud together towards each other that it just feels like a complete clash and a complete headache to listen to, and I didn't enjoy listening to it at all. And then you've got Boogie, which is one of my least favourite tracks of the year, which has all of these elements going against each other, these really quite annoying and repetitive vocal yelps, and you've got this tin can brass going up and down that just sounded really, really not good at all, in my opinion. So yeah, there were quite a few tracks which to me were just a headache to listen to, and I didn't enjoy Bleach as well. I didn't enjoy listening to that.
Now we've had Joe's little moan corner. Let's hear my, I feel like I've gotten a bad rep over the past few weeks for disliking albums which probably deserve praise. So it's nice that it's changed for once, so you'll get all of the disappointment from the few listeners we have, because this album, I think, is the best of the 3. I didn't notice any of the production problems that you had with it. I think that for how experimental the album is, I think it meshes together pretty well, personally. And Boogie, one of your worst of the year, one of my best of the year.
No.
I think it's an incredibly fun time. And
what with Merlin going on about everyone sucking his willy, to me that is so juvenile. I can't listen to that at all. I don't.
Newsflash: Merlin is juvenile.
And to be honest, I didn't.
Call the police.
I didn't like that on his last few albums, and I don't like it here, and it's a lot here, and no, not having it.
Well, I think it's also their most consistent release. I think that there's, most of the tracks on here are pretty strong. I don't think there are too many weak points. It's their most well-paced album. I think that it doesn't feel like it drags particularly at all. And despite following the formula of their last 2 albums with very similar ground being covered and the sort of flow of tracks being more or less the same, I think they've still found ways to keep it fresh and interesting. The main one being that they've taken some of the backbenchers of the Brockhampton group and brought them to the forefront to shine. Case in point, Joba, who I think has some really interesting flows throughout the album, ranging from really quite grating in a good way, I think, to very melodic. And I guess my main problem with the album, if I do have one, is that the lyrics they don't cover any new ground, but I think that the lyrics were good before, and they're pretty good now.
Well, I disagree. I think, similar grounds being covered, which I wouldn't mind so much if they were coming at it with new and kind of more insightful or like a different approach, but I just don't think that happens here. I don't think there were any particularly interesting uses of language in the verses at all. I don't think there were any particularly compelling points of view being put across. I mean, their flows are fine, they can rap, but like I wasn't getting anything out of it.
Okay, favourite tracks.
Favourite tracks, Hottie and Sister.
I've got Boogie, Zipper, Stupid, Hottie, Sister / Nation, and Team. I would love to go into them a bit more. I think I'll say Sister / Nation, as I love the actual musical interludes in the track, so it's not constant rapping. I think that's amazing to hear from them. And Matt Champion's verse on that, his flow is brilliant, and it transitions into the second half so well. And while they have two very different tones, I think the fact they can match them is great. Team, as sort of the final track of the entire Saturation trilogy, you've got to accept that's a good track, surely.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I mean, Bareface's vocals, for one, have improved, which is nice. And the guitar wall of sound that happens is glorious. And then it leads into these completely unexpected raps at the end of the album where each of the members trade their flows off one another in a really exquisite way. It really emphasises the team aspect of the song. And then it loops back into the sound that began Saturation 1 on the track Heat, which you liked. So, you know, can't complain there.
Can't complain if I'm listening to Saturation 1 again.
Okay, and I'll just say Rental was a bit disappointed by that track. Lackluster to me.
Yeah, and my other point on the album was that I wasn't a fan of quite a lot of the hooks on the album, including Rental, Riding on the Roof with a $sign attached to my head, and also the one about the mobile phone. People don't want to look at it. It just came across as a bit dumb to me. So
I quite liked that one, but I'm not going to tell you you're wrong because I can understand why you wouldn't like it.
Thought you were going to say, but I'm going to tell you you're wrong anyway.
No. Well, I'm going to say it's a strong 8 because it is, and now I'm going to put my fingers in my ears and let Joe say his opinion.
Thoroughly disappointed. I give it a 3 out of 10. I'm done.
He's done. Right. I'm so glad that we completely shared opinions on that album. Let's talk about the -5 now. We're going back into the Christmas spirit of things, seeing as Joe seems to need a healthy dose of it. Yeah,
true. That's very true. Because you know what? Winter is my least favourite season.
It's a terrible season.
I get SAD. I get my Raynaud's syndrome flares up. I get psoriasis because of the extremes in temperature. I get insomnia because, well, that's linked to my SAD because my sleep pattern's messed up because, you know, I have to go to work. I don't get sunlight.
And
winter's terrible.
And we have to cancel podcasts
because of the snow. I was going to go see a car last Saturday, but then I couldn't. So, yeah, thanks. I mean, snow is pretty. I love the snow, but not the
effects of the snow.
Not the effects of it. So I like Christmas, and I like getting into the Christmas spirit because
you just wish it happened in summer.
Yeah. So the last item we've got today is Dear December by the -5. The only reason I heard about this album was because I saw on a website a review for it saying that it was an alternative take on Christmas, and I can't remember what else it said, but it was enough for me to like give it a go because it's Christmas time and you give things a go at Christmas time. And
I've never heard anyone say that before. You give things a go at Christmas time. Sure, okay.
When else do you play Pictionary? But okay. So this album, it's drinking away Christmas basically. The album. Yeah. That's how that's the summary.
I'll start by saying that I love new Christmas songs. I love it when like people release Christmas albums which are of original material.
Yeah.
And it's not just rehashes of like the stuff you hear every single year. I was given the responsibility of making the Christmas playlist for last year, and I put in, you know, the traditional ones, and then I made sure to put in as much new stuff as I could, which no one appreciated except me, but, you know, screw them.
Yeah.
This album is... okay.
Okay, well, okay.
I think that the first half of this album is actually really strong, all the way up to the fourth Noel, and then it just takes this sudden nosedive, and I can't listen to the second half. I don't know why. I just find it really disappointing.
I found it a bit more consistent, but I think one of my problems with the album is that, well, it's 32 minutes, 11 tracks. It's a very short album, but I think in the second half it does feel a little bit samey with the first
Is it
half.
only 32 minutes long?
It's only 32 minutes long.
Okay, I've got another issue with the album. It feels so long.
Oh, is there a deluxe edition?
These
damn deluxe editions.
I've had the 11 tracks and listened to them. I didn't realise it was 32 minutes. It felt
short.
so much longer to me.
I think, to me, I personally put that down to it is a little bit samey throughout,
Yeah.
because my favourite track was the second track, When Christmas Hurts You This Way.
That was one of my favourite ones as well.
Which is very lovely and depressing, as much as I
I'll
want to
just read a lyric from it. When your friends gathered their families, and the families are quite sane, when your wife or husband left you standing in a frozen rain, there's no one to buy a present for, you couldn't afford it anyway, no turkey in the oven, no cookies on a tray, but it's so hard to sort it all out when Christmas hurts you this way. That's fantastically morose.
Yeah, and I do like that.
Yeah.
I do like that. And even though this was in the section you said wasn't so good, I enjoyed Merry Christmas, Mr. Gulp Gulp, just because
that was my least favourite on the
I
album.
know it's your least favourite, but I kind of enjoyed the how to put it. I suppose I did enjoy the badness of it. If you like, I found it catchy. You know, he's carrying on hating himself, and I think this is the first song where he really starts taking to the drink. In the song afterwards, he's continuing drinking your Christmas whiskey, and then there's a bit of drinking in You'll Tide Me Over. I think drinking kind of takes over.
I find it impossible to take a metaphor seriously when it includes gulp gulp.
I find that hilarious.
It's repetitive and annoying, and it's definitely the point at which the album starts its decline.
But that's metaphorical for the decline of his persona going throughout the Christmas season.
No, that's a bad excuse. That's it's like it's like if You by Kendrick Lamar just suddenly got terrible halfway through. No, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear my favourite song on the album?
Yeah.
It's The Fourth Noel, which I think is lovely and melancholy, and it's got the best vocal performance of the album. I love the nice change of instruments with the accordion and the chorus. The Ghost of Christmas Past may call, but don't answer just yet. Sometimes it's best to forget.
It's very
gorgeous.
nice. And I do think the piano is very nice in that track as well.
And I think it's well constructed, and it's one of the few songs that doesn't feel overly long. And the middle eight in it is suitably jarring.
Yeah. I have one other good point to make on the album, which I wasn't sure if you would think it's a good point, but I thought it was.
If it's that the distorted guitar tones are good, then no, because I hated them.
No, it's not that. Well, it's something kind of to do with that. It's that the production on the album sounds like it was recorded in an empty bar. And I liked that. It felt like it fitted in with this theme of him being this lonely person who's kind of wallowing in his own self-pity. And I thought that worked.
I think it worked on some songs better than others. Like The Fourth Noel, for example, I got that exact same feeling. Like, you know, Piano Man by Billy Joel feels like it's being performed on a stage in a bar. And that works really well to the song. On songs like The Fourth Noel, I think that works really well. On other ones like Merry Christmas, Mr. Gulp Gulp.
I still like Merry Christmas, Mr. Gulp Gulp, but I acknowledge it's a bad song.
I think throughout the album, even in the second half, the lyrics are pretty good in snatches.
Yeah.
Sometimes delivered well, most often not, and it's better not to dwell on them.
Yeah.
I think if you just let them pass by and get the occasional snippet of, you know, no turkey in the oven, no cookies on a tray, it works.
So
I don't have much else to say about the album.
I mean, neither have I.
My favourite song title is "I Still Believe in New Year's Eve."
Yeah.
I like that.
That was
quite
clever. And then you've also got "You'll Tide Me Over."
Yeah.
But I think when I listen to this album, I think if I was a middle-aged man who'd lost his family and I was incredibly depressed on Christmas, I'd enjoy
You'd
listening.
probably make an album like Gizmodrome.
You're funny, Nick. But yeah, I'd probably listen to this album. But,
Oh, that's depressing.
so okay, but no, I did enjoy aspects of this album. I'd give it like six.
It's hard to give
Yeah.
a rating to it. I would give it a strong 5 to a light 6, because even though I think the second half of the album is forgettable to bad, I think that the first half is actually pretty strong.
I feel like it was a little bit more consistent, but it's not something I'd like go back to a lot, I think. Like, I do like When Christmas Hurts You This Way. That is my favourite track, and I probably will listen to that again. There are some good moments, but overall, I think it's perhaps just not my cup of tea.
Well, so much for getting into the Christmas spirit.
Let's get into more Christmas spirit then.
Let's do some shout-outs.
Shout-outs.
And let's do some shout-outs of albums which also were not good.
Okay, so Brockhampton's wasn't the worst.
Oh,
hip-hop album.
I
Well, Nick liked
I
it,
got
but-
a message from Joe saying, "Have you listened to the new Eminem album?" Oh my fucking god! And Joe isn't one who swears often, as I'm sure you've noticed from listening to previous podcasts. I got a chance to listen to it just before we started doing the podcast, and oh my god, it's
Okay, so new Eminem album.
Okay, what's worse, the bit where he compares Trump to being essentially Adolf Hitler, or the use of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts' "I Love Rock and Roll" as a sample?
See, I don't like I Love Rock and Roll. I don't like that. I understand it as a bit of a stomping fun track, but I do not like that song. And its use and Eminem's use of it is bloody appalling. It sounds horrible. I don't like it.
I mean, what's up with Eminem's flow throughout the album? It starts off and he's just this sort of broken up into sections thing where he's really emphasizing each word, and then he moves on to another political point. And you think, okay, it's kind of, all right for one track, but it's not even all right for one track. And then he just keeps doing it.
And he's so ham-fisted with it as well. Which, and I understand him and lots of other people being, annoyed with current political affairs, but it doesn't mean you have to write terrible music.
Yeah, it's seriously one of the worst albums of the year.
I
think like, for me, it's worse than Gizmodrome.
Okay.
Better than Katy Perry, but worse than Gizmodrome.
That's saying something. It's probably going to end up on my worst of this. The only question...
Did you like the Ed Sheeran feature?
No. That's a big N-O. But the only question for me with this album is it worse than Machine Gun Kelly?
I still haven't listened to that.
should
I'm
make
deliberately
you,
not
but-
listening to it because you've told me how bad it is.
But the
I'd rather
thing
not
is-
subject myself to it.
The thing is, with Machine Gun Kelly, there are elements of that album where I can laugh. I can think, oh, this is so silly. What's going on? And it's terrible, but there is some amusement factor in it. Eminem has no amusement factor. I
found this album hilarious in how bad it was, honestly.
Okay.
Which is probably why I think it's better than Katy Perry's album, because that was just a joyless slump of despair.
Yeah. Yeah, so Eminem's album...
Do you want to go on to
not
talk
good.
about something good, or do you want to carry on this train of awful...
Train of disaster! All aboard, choo-choo! You too! I listened to it. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing I've heard all year. But I don't understand how Bono lives with himself writing such boring music.
Bono thinks he's saving the world.
Bono saves no one. Bono needs to get back to where he belongs, in his little house where he's made his tidy sum of money, and just leave everyone else alone.
One of my favourite stories about Bono was when he was doing a U2 concert in Scotland, and he stopped the music and just went, "Listen," and he started clapping. And he said, "Every time I clap, a child in Africa dies." And someone from the audience shouted, "Well, stop clapping then, you bastard."
Oh, I've not heard that. That's hilarious. I should probably say the name of the album. It's Songs of Experience. Guess what it is? Guess what it is, Nick? It's a deluxe edition.
Oh God.
It's a deluxe.
God.
I can't.
Is it in like? Do the extra tracks make it in any way superior to the original version?
No, what? Hell no. 17 tracks. I think it was 6 extra tracks or something like that. 1 hour 7 minutes. I mean, really, it's not like super long. 1 hour 7 minutes. But did I even make it to the extra tracks? I'm trying to remember now. It was a few weeks ago it was released, but did I make it to the extra tracks? I like to think I did because I've got good tolerance for terrible music, but it's completely uninteresting. Completely uninteresting. I think I'm done with my shout outs.
Well, I've got one more shout out to make, which is for the new N.E.R.D album, which is called No One Ever Really Dies. I'd like to give a shout out to this album because actually I found I've never really liked N.E.R.D before, but this album is really fun. I don't think it's particularly groundbreaking, but it's incredibly fun.
Yeah.
And the most praise I can sing for it is, one, it has a Rihanna guest slot on it, and Rihanna is actually really good. Her rapping slot on it is actually surprisingly great.
Wow.
2, it has an Ed Sheeran guest spot on it.
Oh no.
And they've made great use of Ed Sheeran on it by having him barely noticeable in the track.
And now, take notes, Eminem.
It also has 2 Kendrick Lamar slots on it.
Oh,
which
that's
is
good.
pretty nice.
Yeah.
But
how they manage that.
That album's very fun. I do recommend that album if you're going to listen to one of these 3 shout-outs.
Okay,
Let's do a rundown of what we've talked about so far on the podcast.
roundup.
Let's start with the Christmas albums. Let's group them as a whole. Are we going to give them a toy, give them some coal, or put them in the sack?
I'm putting them in the sack, although I'll try and salvage Alexander Armstrong, I think.
Yeah. I think I'd do the same, personally. I feel like Alexander Armstrong has been very much let down by the Bradley Walsh Anton Beke part.
Yeah. I can't get over how bad Bradley Walsh's music taste is. Bloody hell, who would listen to that absolute nonsense?
Can we put a special sack within the sack in which we're going to put the Bradettes?
Yeah. Oh dear. Okay, you know what? The less said about them, the better. Okay, moving on.
Glassjaw, which I think we'll both agree is probably going to be our artist of the podcast.
Oh yeah, definitely the best of what we've reviewed today. I would get, you know what? They're getting more than stocking filler. They're getting a car.
I'm going to give them a really nice shiny distortion pedal.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Okay, I almost don't want to go on to this next bit, but as I'm actually St. Nicholas and in control of the sack, I am going to put a block on the sack to stop Brockhampton from going in it, as much as Joe's going to try and push them in.
I'm a Grinch. I will find a way. I am very sneaky.
And the -5s did December. I'm going to give it a piece of coal, but not too big a piece of coal.
Their Christmas is just depression.
Yeah, they'd probably relish the piece of coal.
They would. I kind of feel like
I'm going to give them a trip to rehab.
That's a good idea, because initially I thought I'd buy him a drink, but that's probably not a good idea. So, yeah, 1 ticket to rehab for them.
And one last thing before we go. Christmas is traditionally a time for giving gifts. So, Joe, I've got you something.
Oh, okay.
Let me get it for you. Close your eyes.
I'm very nervous.
And open them. This is for you.
Oh.
Would you like to tell them what it is?
It is Alligator by the National Vinyl.
Original edition, 2005.
That is collector's.
I didn't know if you had a vinyl player or not, but I figured you'd probably like to have it to savour for the future.
Yeah, I definitely would. I mean, my brother has a vinyl player, so I'll nab his for a bit, I think. But yeah, probably my favourite National album. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Nick.
I will say now, I wanted to get you an original pressing of Post by Beke, but that was £150.
Oh, bloody hell. That's a lot.
So I couldn't quite afford that, but...
Aw, that's so sweet of you.
Well, hopefully that will give you a bit more Christmas spirit.
More Christmas spirit will cure my SAD. It's terrible when you have SAD and you're already a depressing person, but yeah, Thanks, Nick.
You're welcome, buddy. But for now, Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.
I hope you all get exactly what you want.
Yes,
And
unless what you want is not good.
remember, if you've been naughty this year, I'm coming for you.
And so am I, because I'm a Grinch. I'm coming for everyone.
And
Anyway,
with that, I wish you adieu. Goodbye.
bye.
F sharp. A sharp. Revisited.